So here I've got a strip of the pins that have been etched, and I've folded them up a bit. Let's unwind them a bit. So if I cut the end off here, because they've been a bit bent, well, let's take some from here. And we need 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we do that there, we've now got 6 pins on this sort of strip, slightly bent, because these are so soft it's very difficult to keep them in shape. So that's the number for half a connector block. Now over here I've got a forming tool. This has been 3D printed in resin, and you can see there's some sort of slots here, and that's shaped at the bottom in the shape of the underside of the pin that we want, and here we've got the opposing view, so this is the top side of the shape of pin that we want, and they actually fit together pretty well. And the idea is you take a strip of pins, if you can pick them up without bending them, you place them in here like so, so that they are inside the tool, which is pretty easy to do. So there's 6 there. You could make a bigger tool actually with more than 6, but I've only done 6 at the moment. You then place the tool on top, align the tool so that you can now squeeze these two halves together. Now I've done it by hand in the past, but I do have a little hand clamp here, so I'm going to give that a go. Now it's only a resin print, so it's not very strong, but let's just see what happens when I give it a good squeeze. Right, so the first thing that happens is I can only really squeeze part of the tool there, and that's about as hard as I can go. I don't want to break the tool, so I do the same this end, but that end's not forming anything. This is the end with the strip, and there's nothing really going on. It's really only in this part of the tool here. So let's take the top off. There's the top, and here, if I take that out, we should have formed pins, and yes, they are pretty well formed into the shape that we require. So I think that's worked. That's very well. It's not exactly the same as the original. The original's got some features that curve the sides up as well, which I'm going to add, and these are narrower than we need, but that is a set of formed pins. That has worked pretty well. So I don't know how long the tool will last. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think it was like 30p for each half of the tool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do another one. So feed that in there. Now you can see they're totally out of line now, but you can bend them back pretty easily and they line up with the holes. Make sure that it's in. Make sure like that it's in the right position, and then align that end, the end closest to the strip first, then the other end. And I can feel, yeah, I can feel I can do that by hand. You don't need, with this copper it's so soft you don't need any sort of press with it, I don't think. I did leave a gap which was the same thickness as the pin itself, but that doesn't seem to close all the way down, which I was expecting it to. Maybe I'm not bending totally as it needs to, but yeah, again, that's a set of pins there. So we've got a set of pins there which really need to go into a connector block just to see how well they are formed. So even though this is soft, I can still put them together because they're the right shape, more or less. We need to check that shape is correct for going onto the connector block. So I've soldered the set of pins into this 3D printed connector header, and they're all pretty well aligned. You can see here that they're all lined up. I've got a connector block, but it doesn't want to actually connect because the opening on the pins is too narrow really, and these tend to be quite sharp. The sharpness of the edges is what the forming of the edges of the connector pins is designed remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to see if I can bend the pins and force them onto the connector. So I think the forming is going to have to open the gap of the pins wider. Maybe I'll just use some tweezers to do that. Bend them out a little bit. Let's try that. Because I'm going to see if I can get the connector block to actually form the pins for me somehow. Yeah, so that's not worked too well. So some of the pins have worked, others are... oh, there we go. Okay, so there's one here that's bent out, and that's going to be a terrible problem if you were using copper. But the others seem much happier. So you can actually now push that on, and it's got a good sort of snap as it goes over the bump on the end of the flexi, and it does feel very similar to the original connector. And also the forming means that the connector patch is now on the correct part of the flexi. The hand formed ones were too far that way to the right to actually contact, but these are contacting in exactly the right place and exactly where the original did actually. Well, actually it may be a little bit further to the left, but I think the case doesn't actually push these all the way on when you're in the module case in the 41C. So that looks very good, and it feels really good as well. So as long as you protected these pins and didn't allow them to bend, they do have enough spring for repeated removals and insertions like that. That's pretty good. There's not a lot of difference there, and they're not bending out any further than they are, so there is enough spring there. I'm not sure they're doing a huge amount to the actual surface of the flexi either, because that seems to be quite worn just from the original pins. So yeah, that's pretty close. I'm still going to investigate brass and phosphor bronze, I think, though, to see if you get some better pins, but that's pretty close, and the form tool's done its job nicely.